All right, guys. Okay. So, here we are. So, a few reminders. So these are the details for the final exam, as you're, I'm sure, all aware. Here are the readings and the lecture material that you need to know for the exam. I trust that everyone did receive the announcement that I sent out to our course website, that there are parts of Chapter 13 and Chapter 16 that you don't need to know for the exam. There are some people who have let me know of a conflict with their exam schedule. So this is when the makeup exam is going to be. Now this makeup exam on December the 13th is only for people who have a conflict. Okay? Only for people who have like a mini exam conflict, or their, the registrar scheduled them to write an exam at the same time as ours. So if this is one of you, and I trust there are a number of you guys in the room, maybe who have gotten those forms that I need to sign so you can take back to your counseling or your dean's office and whatnot, please bring them up to me at the break and plan for that to be your makeup exam time. If this still has some kind of conflict with your schedule, let me know as soon as possible. If anyone has any other questions about the course or the course content, I'm also going to be offering extended office hours this Friday morning from 9:30 to 12. So I'll be in SSC 4434 in case any of you guys have any questions. All right? But a lot of this information, the stuff that's going to be on the exam, that's all available on our course website. Was there any questions before we got into talking about positive psychology? All right. So, the first half we're going to be talking about positive psychology. The part, most of Chapter 16. The last half we're going to be talking about money, consumption, and happiness. Much of that is just kind of pulled from, other research that isn't covered in the textbook. So let's start with positive psychology. So, Positive psychology. So it's a movement in psychology that focuses on human strengths and how people can flourish, quote unquote, and be successful. And it was started by this guy when he was the president of the American Psychological Association. Okay? And it's, in terms of a movement, so people are saying, or were saying back then, that positive psychology could be the next big thing in psychology. So maybe with, in kind of context how we've gone from Freud to behaviorism to, stronger focus on cognitive capacities and cognitive thoughts, to doing more research on genetics and neuroscience. And positive psychology could be, yes, one of those next big things. We're still kind of right in the middle of riding that wave right now. There has been a lot of research attributed to the positive psychology movement, and it doesn't seem to have fizzled. That is to say, there are a lot of researchers that have since 1998 that have done a lot of research connected to the positive psychology movement, and there are a lot of researchers that still continue to do positive psychology research. So, Martin Seligman, he proposed that positive psychology is kind of a call for people to do research on positive things. So much of psychology and psychology research has been focused on negative processes and negative mental states. So we need to do more research on positive things. So what exactly is he talking about? Well, so just to provide some historical context. Most applied psychologists, clinical psychologists, and research psychologists, they do want to help people. Okay? People don't go into this field for the money. I can definitely tell you that. They do genuinely want to help people live more successful, problem-free lives. So what they do to try to help people is to study problems, study psychological disorders, and try and understand, well, what causes people to have psychological disorders, for example? What causes people to experience stress? So most psychologists are studying these, negative things to try and inform people and inform practitioners how to help people eliminate them, how to eliminate disorders, and how to reduce distress. So, as a consequence, a lot of psychologists do focus on these negative things. They focus on these negative disorders, negative mental states. We're basically trying to help people avoid disease and avoid disorders and avoid problems. And Martin Seligman would argue that this has provided a somewhat negative impression of the field of psychology. So let's look at a few examples. This is one example from chapter 3, when we're talking, when I was introducing stress and talking about stress. And this was a graph that was illustrating how one negative state, problems over money, work, and the economy, led to another negative state, stress, higher stress levels. Okay? Here is another example. So this was research discussing how certain negative states, such as work-logical burnout, which led to even more negative states. Increased absenteeism, increased illness, reduced productivity. Negative leads to negative, negative leads to negative, which leads to negative. So what positive psychologists are arguing is that we have this negative focus on psychology, and it may provide the impression that life is this kind of dark and dangerous place where, people are just basically should be wary of problems and avoiding disorders. And in contrast, because we focused on these negative things so much, we're not really we're drawing any attention to the positive qualities of people and the positive qualities of humanity. Okay? And we're not really helping people to build on their strengths. So this predominant focus on negative stuff may prevent us or may not inspire us to help people recognize, how to live their lives or enjoy their lives better, or live more fulfilling, healthier lives. So this is what positive psychology as a movement is trying to accomplish. Okay? So change the focus from preoccupation with repairing the worst things in life, the most negative things in life, to building positive qualities. So, understanding how to harness people's strengths and virtues and other good qualities in order to help people enhance their lives. And this is pretty important. Creating tools and techniques and other kinds of interventions for promoting and regulating well-being, promoting more positive emotions, promoting better psychological health. So one way of looking at it is, those examples I showed you, how psychologists have done all this research on negative states lead to other negative states, which lead to other negative states. Positive psychologists would be more likely to do research on, what kinds of positive qualities or healthy processes lead to positive states, lead to feeling happier, lead to feeling more fulfilled. Well, so the question is this kind of analogous to preventative medicine? Maybe what I would instead say is might be more analogous to proactive medicine, if that makes any sense. So we're not just trying to kind of prevent disorders, but we're trying to, beyond the experience of the stress, what can we do to enhance people's subjective experiences? Actually, that question you raised very closely dovetails with this model right here. Okay? So the approach of positive psychology is to try and help people to flourish. Cultivate human strengths and these positive qualities to help people flourish. So what does flourishing mean? Well, this is one depiction right there. And you can think, to understand it better, you can compare it to floundering or some of these other states. So there are two critical dimensions here. One is the experience of mental illness. So the experiencing, for example, psychological disorders. And the other dimension is well-being. So well-being, people tend to think about well-being as, how satisfied are you with your life overall? Okay? Are you pretty happy with your life? Are you very satisfied with everything that's going on? So, an important takeaway from this model is trying to kind of disentangle that state of being what we might call problem-free or disorder-free from truly flourishing and being super happy and super healthy at the same time. So, for example, people who are floundering, low well-being, high degree of mental illness. Okay? Think about people who are super, really, really depressed. Okay? Or maybe they're really